Hey gang, what's going on? And welcome to Talking Vegas All Day with KA. I'm your host KA, wishing you a happy 2022. I hope your year is off to a great start, and I thank you for joining us on the first episode of this year. Boy, do I have a good one for you today. We're going to go back to an iconic hotel and casino with a long and infamous yet glamorous history as great as Las Vegas. And what am I talking about, folks? I'm talking about the Stardust in today's episode, and it promises to be a good one. And again, thanks to everybody on Twitter who helped vote on today's episode. I love the interaction that we're having on Twitter, and I love hearing from you guys. Which leads me to my question of the day. What memories do you have of the Stardust? Good, bad, indifferent? Tell me in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And make sure to hit that like button, click subscribe, and punch that notification bell so you get up-to-date notifications when we drop new episodes. And if you want to interact with me on social media, I'm on Twitter at Vegas_KA, and I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Talking Vegas All Day with KA. And finally, the show's available on Apple and Spotify podcast platforms. So without further ado, let's get started on today's episode of Talking Vegas All Day with me, KA.
Let's go to Vegas, baby. Let's go tonight.
Right now.
Let's go to Vegas. We'll stay up all night. Let's go to Vegas.
The Stardust story starts with Tony Carino, also known as Tony Strala. Who is Tony Strala, you ask? He was born in 1899 in northern Italy. He moved with his family to the U.S. in 1904, and he would spend most of his time as a teenager working on the ships in the Orient. He spent most of the 1920s and 30s, as most people do that we cover on this show, running booths involved in legal gambling, mostly in the U.S., and spent time in jail. During the 40s, he spent most of his time in illegal activities in California before heading to Las Vegas. Carino's strategy, once he got there, was to get away from the elegance of the Desert Inn and the Sands, the high-end hotels at the time. He wanted to attract visitors and masses, not just the sophisticated and high rollers. He decided that by charging $5 a day for a room, giving guests $5 for gambling, he could turn a profit. Hundreds of shares were sold for the company which he started, and the new resort was going to be called Tony Carino Starlight and would have its own train stop on the Union Pacific track bordering the rear property line. However, due to Las Vegas zoning and other legal issues, the train station never materialized. Shortly thereafter, he started the Stardust Company. He and two partners applied for a gaming license in 1954. However, the Nevada Tax Commission said they would never grant a license to Carino due to the fact that he had previously engaged in a illegal gaming operation. He would describe the Stardust as astronomical luxury at down-to-earth prices, and that was going to be his vision for the Stardust. The hotel would offer a new world of pleasure and would be designed for conventions, large meetings as well, and for the public seeking entertainment and pleasure. All rooms were going to be air conditioned, and he was going to boast the largest theater show restaurant on the Strip. He also envisioned that the resort would hold shops and other recreational and social programming designed for entertainment and top-notch relaxation. Initially, the Stardust was scheduled to open in 1955. However, request for a gaming license was denied due to his previous background in gambling. He eventually gave up on a gaming license. Instead, he planned to lease the casino to a small group for basically $500,000 a month, and the group was licensed in June of 1955, which caused opening to be pushed back a month. However, as constructions continued to progress, Tony unfortunately would never realize his vision as he died suddenly in July of 1955 while gambling at the Desert Inn. Rumors say that his death was over a $25 chip with a casino dealer, and his death was also considered suspicious due to his ties in organized crime, and an investigation was soon opened. Foul play was never brought into the picture, and it was ruled he just had a massive heart attack. So with Tony out of the picture, his brother Louis was named the president and general manager funny story about Lewis. He was also the mayor of St. Helena, California, and he only planned to remain with the Stardust until the legal issues over gaming and property and zoning rights were resolved. And this caused construction to be shut down August 1st of 1955 over labor disputes. Work did, however, resume the following month, and there were plans to have the resort open by Christmas, which again did not happen. And the Stardust sat there for a while with 85% complete. And it was alleged that Carino had no money to finish construction. He would then take out a loan for another $2.1 million to try to complete the property. At the same time, in January of 57, John, better known as Jake the Barber Factor, brothers of cosmetic giants Max Factor, and who was a man who was no stranger to organized crime, in particular the Chicago outfit, purchased a still unfinished Stardust. He also brought in Mo Doubts. There we go again. Uncle Mo is back in the picture. He was currently the manager of the Desert Inn Casino. Later in 57, Factor and his group received court approval to take over the Stardust. An opening expected around 58. Factor paid $4.3 million to take over ownership, and construction of the Stardust finally was completed after 18 months of inactivity. Stardust opened in January 2nd, 1958, and attendees include the Nevada governor, many Nevada and U.S. senators and congressmen, and various celebrities such as Bob Hope, Milton Berle, Ethel Merman. With its 1,000 guest rooms, it was bigger than any hotel previously opened on the Las Vegas Strip. It was all about size rather than style, and most of the prominent features of its 16,000 square foot casino, which was immense for a time, and a 140-foot bar also that rang along its east walls, was pretty much the forerunner to the D's Long Bar, which is one of my favorite bars, in downtown Las Vegas. The real star, however, of the Stardust on its opening was the Lido de Paris, the first topless French Revue production staged in Las Vegas. It became renowned for both the technical complexity of the Lido and the stage-mounted 6 hydraulic lifts that would rise and lower as the drama demanded, and the beauty of the costume showgirls. With its hotel rooms sprawling to the back of the 2-story wings, the Stardust's chief roadside visual impact was its brightly lit 216-foot sign called Universa's Celestials. It was described as bodies joined by a round earth circled by a satellite. The sign was a record setter, as was the 105-foot long Big Dipper pool. However, despite its popularity, the Stardust continued to face financial problems at its opening, to a point it had over $1 million of liens filed against it at one time. However, the 9-story hotel addition was completed in 1964, and a year later, it was purchased by Lodestar Incorporated, which consisted of major Desert Inn stockholders such as Mo Doubts, whom we've talked about, like I said earlier, and they turned it into one of the most profitable casinos in Las Vegas. And it continued to grow throughout the 60s, which included the seafood restaurant Moby Dick's, the Polynesian hot spot Aku Aku, and although both are gone, at least one piece of Aku Aku survives to this day in Las Vegas. Keno also was another one of the Stardust's innovations in the 60s and had long been played downtown, but it was the very first Keno bar in Las Vegas Strip history, which was brought to by under Jerry Steinberg, and he brought that in 1967. By the end of 67, there was also rumors that Howard Hughes was going to purchase the Stardust for $40 million. Under mysterious circumstances, that agreement fell apart. Negotiations were underway in March of 1968, and despite monopoly concerns due to Hughes already owning several other Las Vegas properties, he received primary approval from Nevada Gaming Control Board. However, an antitrust law was launched days before he could complete the purchase, so it was never finalized, and he dropped out in 1968. Doubts then sold the property, which 5 years later sold the casino to Alan Glick's Argent Corporation. And Al Sachs was chosen as general manager for the Stardust after surviving as the casino's manager there for many years. Now, I'm going to get into Argent here in a second, but I'm going to tell you this. Basically, for those of you that are listening right now and know the Stardust well, you're probably thinking, okay, you're maybe skipping a couple things. Well, to be fair, this episode, I didn't want to get too much into dates and times. I want to keep this going. So basically, Argent Corporation is known as having started one of the largest skims in Vegas history. And it's kind of tied back to the Milwaukee mob and the Kansas City mob. And if you've ever seen the movie Casino, that basically is what happened with the skim at the Stardust. When Frank Lefty Rosenthal was given control, he came in, there was federal investigations. Long story short, federal investigation got into it. He kind of got out while the getting was good. And that really brought a bad light to organized crime in Las Vegas. That's the thing I say. I could spend probably about 20 minutes going down through what all happened, but there was a lot of illegal gambling going on and skimming going on in Las Vegas, and the Stardust was right in the front of it. In 1972, the hotel company Hyatt began negotiations to purchase the property. However, it was soon canceled, and a San Diego developer purchased the Stardust in 1974 using money borrowed from the Teamsters pension fund, which again, if you know anything about organized crime, you're finding this very funny. And it was led by Alan Glick. Now, this is where Argent comes in. Argent, along with Sachs and Turptum, took over the corporation in 79 and was managed until 1972. This again is the same thing with the skimming and the Chicago mob. And after a 2-year investigation in 1983, suspension of the Stardust gaming license using new emergency powers for the first time ever, removed all management. Federal government then sold the Stardust Constellation Incorporated that included Bill Boyd of Boyd Gaming. He was chosen by the Gaming Control Board to temporarily manage the hotel and casino. However, even though they had given it, Sachs and Argent continued to fight. However, that case was dropped. As new manager, Boyd made several controversial changes to Stardust, such as replacing the famous Lido de Paris, which inspired several imitations, and gave stage shows to young magicians, Siegfried and Roy, with less than revered stage shows, such as Enter the Night in 1922. While the resort's 1967 sign remained, Boyd replaced the mid-century futuristic lettering with blocky, bold-faced type. Boyd's purchase ended the era of mob control in Las Vegas. And prior to that, he had never considered owning a Las Vegas Strip property. The Boyd family were surprised to see how profitable the Stardust actually was now that skimming was no longer being practiced. The Boyds introduced a personal style customer service, and according to Boyd, when we took over, the dealers weren't even allowed to talk to the customers. We were on a more family-type company, he later stated. And in the late 90s, Boyd delayed plans to redevelop the Stardust play, choosing instead to focus on the Borgata in Atlantic City. Back to Atlantic City, just like the Showboat. The Stardust experienced weak reviews during 2001, and approximately 200 employees were laid off. And this begins the basic downfall of the Stardust. The resort suffered further economic suffrage impact on the September 11th tax. New projects were underway surrounded by Stardust, the mega resorts, such as the Wynn. And as a result, Boyd was considering constructing a new resort in place of Stardust. However, those plans fell through. 2003, it saw its 45th anniversary. Past entertainers were invited as VIP for celebrations held there, and at the time, a capsule was created with Stardust memorabilia, and a new cocktail was also created and served as a commemorative anniversary drink. Boyd said that the Stardust still provided a retro experience for those seeking it, saying it's old Las Vegas, and we have a lot of customers who enjoy classic Las Vegas experience. That would also be somebody like KA. However, the resort was no longer a top owner for Boyd, and increased marketing of the resort failed to provide additional revenue. And since it was considered a prime piece of real estate, Boyd ultimately decided to tear it down and was going to build a new property in 2010, Echelon. However, that fell through too. On its final night, the hotel was sold out, and before the closure, Stardust nearly had 1,600 employees, and prior to closure had spent cataloging more than 7,000 items to be auctioned off, including furniture, artwork, and even palm trees. 5 days before the auction took place, the resort closed and was demolished for the Echelon project, which, as we know, never happened. In its time, the Stardust was an icon used for major fights, concerts, and gaming. When I think of Vegas, I always think of Stardust. I think of the Sands. But I also think of more modern day places, such as the Wynn, Caesar's Palace, the Cosmo. I think it was a great thing, but ultimately, it's a snapback in the mob and organized crime history. Looking back on it, I think it really revolutionized the glitz and glamour of Las Vegas. And I wish it was still kind of here today, to be honest with you. I wish we still had more of the old Vegas. Yeah, we have the Tropicana, folks, but let's be honest, it's a dump now. And I hate to say that, but it is. And El Cortez is a locals only, but that still fits a mold. And it's sad that downtown, if you want to go vintage, is where you need to go rather than the Strip. Although, as you know, KA loves downtown. So I'm not complaining. I just wish there was more of the old properties still around today. So there you go, an amazing story of the history of the Stardust. I have included the references where I've gotten some of my information. Make sure to hit that like button. And if you still haven't, please like this episode and leave a comment. And better yet, hit subscribe. If you want to interact with me on social media, I'm on Twitter at Vegas_KA and on Instagram and Facebook at Talking Vegas All Day. So in closing here, I got a few great episodes coming up I want to share with you guys. We're going to be bringing back Vegas icons. We're going to be talking about Benny Binions coming up. We're going to be talking about the Riviera. We're going to be talking about the Westward Ho. I'm also going to be diving into some more organized crime in Las Vegas, telling some stories that I didn't share on today's episode, but I'm going to be sharing with you in the future. So leave a comment. Tell me what you thought about this episode. Again, I know I might have left some stuff out, but that's for future episodes. And who knows, I might revisit this episode again and talk about a little bit more. But that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you next time on Talking Vegas All Day with me, K.A.